We have to get to, I guess, probably the biggest story of the weekend. This awful shooting in Buffalo. There was a guy who went in, shot up a supermarket in Buffalo. I believe 10 people are killed. As always, whenever there is a shooting with a potential political or especially racial motive, everybody goes in instantly and tries to find out why the guy is actually on the other team. That's what always happens, right? The left goes in, they try to make him on the right, and then the right goes in and tries to make him on the left. I guess actually the first thing that happens is the media will go in and decide whether or not to cover the story. And if the story corresponds with their predetermined political narrative, then they will cover it. So if the story is about a white racist killing black people, they will cover it. They will make that a huge national news story. The President of the United States, as in this case, will go and visit and make a big media spectacle out of it. If the story contradicts the narrative, if it is, say, a black racist killing white people or a black racist killing Asian people, they will bury it. They will not talk about it. That's what happened with the Waukesha killing. That's what happened with the New York City subway shooting. There were news stories for about 24 hours, and then when the narrative did not fit the media's preconceived political agenda, then they just buried that news story. The president didn't have time to go to Waukesha. The president didn't have time to go to New York City, but now he will. Okay. That is just what always is going to happen. I thought Candace Owens had the best take on this. She said, don't forget, folks, the media don't care about white people. The media don't care about black people. The media only care about power. And so that's going to affect all of the coverage here. Then the next thing that happens is that everyone tries to go in and make the guy on the other side. And so the left is obviously doing that to the right now, and the right, to some degree, is doing it with the left, too. I read the purported manifesto of this killer. I don't see any reason to read his thesis on why he committed this crime. I don't see any reason to say the guy's name. I don't see any reason to give him the airtime and fame that he is obviously seeking. But I will go in just to clarify things in terms of who he is and what some of his motivations were. Not what he was necessarily hoping to achieve, or his grand political thesis, but just what might have motivated him, because you're going to hear a lot of misinformation, certainly from the left, but maybe some from the right too. So he says, are you a Christian? No, I do not ask God for salvation by faith, nor do I confess my sins to him. I personally believe there is no afterlife. So if anyone tells you this is about Christianity or a Christian nationalism or Christian whatever, that's not true. He says it's not true, and he seems sincere. Are you a fascist? Yes. He says he's a fascist. Are you a white supremacist? Yes. Are you an anti-Semite? Yes. I wish all Jews to hell, he says. This is more evidence that he is not Christian, because if you're a Christian, what you want is for Jews to accept Jesus and go to heaven and be in heaven forever with everybody, not just Jews, but everybody on earth. You are praying for everyone's salvation. This guy's obviously not doing that. He's wishing someone to go to hell. Are you a neo-Nazi? He says, I support neo-Nazism. Are you a conservative? No. So they're going to say, this guy's a conservative. He explicitly says, I'm not a conservative. Are you right-wing? He says, depending on the definition, sure. Are you left-wing? Depending on the definition, sure. And this is a point that I always try to make. You always hear the left invoking Nazis and Hitler. And they say and they call everyone to the right of Hillary Clinton a Nazi and Hitler. And then sometimes you'll hear people on the right come back and say, actually, Hitler was a leftist. Actually, Nazism is a left-wing ideology. It's not a right-wing ideology. And the answer is, not everything breaks down on the left or right. The answer is left and right, which is a political framework that comes out of the French Revolution and describes the people who defended the church and the monarchy on the right, and the people who defended the radicals and the atheists on the left, and the revolutionaries on the left. That doesn't apply to every single political situation. Hitler and the Nazis had some aspects of their political movement that were right-wing, that had some aspects of the political movement that were traditionalists, and that were traditionalist themselves, and had some aspects of their political movement that were left-wing. The rampant atheism, the anti-Christianity, the modernism, the modern scientism, all those things were the statism. Those things were aspects of the left. And so you really can't, I know that's the least satisfying answer of all, but you actually can't categorize the Nazis or lots of political movements on just the left or on just the right. He says, are you a socialist? Depending on the definition. So he says, in a way, I actually am a socialist. You're not going to hear that from the media. What does that mean? It means you can't neatly characterize this guy. Did you always hold these views? He says, when I was 12, I was deep into communist ideology. From age 15 to 18, I consistently moved further to the right. On the political compass, I fall in the mild, moderate, authoritarian left category. So that's the category where you would lump Stalin or somebody in. Again, this is going to contradict the media narrative, so you're not going to hear about it. And probably the media are going to attack me for even reading this, but I think it's important to read this if you want to understand what the motivations are, not because this guy is some grand political thinker who should in any way be emulated, but rather because we know that the media are going to lie about this, and so we want to be able to form our own conclusions. If we had a trustworthy media, we wouldn't have to do that. And then this might be the most interesting aspect here tactically. This Looney Tune says, won't your attack result in calls for the removal of gun rights in the United States? He says, yes, that is the plan all along. You said you would fight to protect your rights and Constitution. Soon the time will come. So he's saying, yes, actually the reason that I'm using these guns, and in the manifesto he posts all sorts of information about the guns, is to get gun control. Because he says that if there's gun control, this will really irritate the people who defend the Second Amendment, and this could increase the chances of some kind of war between the left and the right, or the races, or whatever. That's really all I have to say about this. There's nothing left to say that isn't said. Obviously, it's very wrong to kill people. It's very wrong to embrace these insane ideologies. But the rule of thumb that is really worth looking at here, whether you find yourself being radicalized to the far left, or radicalized to the far right, or radicalized to the far whatever, if you can't place it, there is no end that justifies an immoral means. We actually were talking about this last week, or the week before that. In parts of this guy's ravings, he said he asked, "Will you regret this?" And he says, "I probably will. Yeah, I don't bear any ill will toward these people individually. I don't think they've done anything wrong individually. But my ideology that I've formed is such that I'm just going to suppress that moral intuition and kill these people." Don't do that. People do this all the time. Usually it doesn't have these sort of tragic, extreme consequences, but people do this sort of thing all the time. They believe that their political ends justify immoral means. They don't. There is no end that justifies an immoral. Almost all the time, when you commit an immoral action because you think that there is some good end that will result in, it doesn't actually result in a good end. But even if it could, the immoral means would not be justified. You judge the action on the action itself. In a completely separate sort of version of this, a month or so ago, I was with Ted Cruz at Yale, and some kid thought he was going to be funny, and he got up and he said, to end world hunger, would you fillet another man? And he thought this was a really funny question, because if we answered no, then we look heartless because we don't want to end world hunger. And if we answered yes, then we just said we would fillet another man on stage, and the kid would have thought that was funny. But I actually didn't think this was a complicated question. The question was, would you commit an immoral action for an ostensibly good end? And the answer is no. No, don't. That's really simple stuff, folks. And we're living in the age post-Machiavelli. We're living in the age where we judge everything by these abstract calculations and utilitarianism and maximizing the greatest good for the greatest number, even involves cracking a few eggs to make an omelet. That's morally idiotic. That's morally bankrupt. Just do the right thing, okay? Simple enough. I'm so glad you liked that clip. Now ring that, smash that, like that, click, and make sure, did I say that right? I think I did. Make sure that you get the notifications for The Michael Knowles Show. You can also go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you get your audio podcast. Subscribe to The Michael Knowles Show. Leave a 5-star review. Leave a 10-star review if you wouldn't mind. We'll see you next time.